today we're going to look at two spiritual disciplines, fasting and prayer. And of course, one of the texts you just heard, and so I won't read it this morning. We have been spending some time looking at what does it take for us to personally commit to our spiritual growth. And there's very good reason for that. At Mount Pleasant, we want to be involved in making disciples who make a difference. Most of us know that much. But there are four different areas in which we want this to play out in our lives. First, the way we celebrate God. We as a church need to celebrate God and His love. Secondly, how we connect with one another. How do we connect with smaller groups from within the church so that we can learn how to do Christianity, Christ's life, while we walk here on this earth. 3, we're going to learn how to serve our community. Serve our community so that we are invited to share our faith. And that's what we need to be about as a church. It's part of making disciples who make a difference. But the fourth thing is committing to our own personal growth towards Jesus Christ. Committing to our own personal maturity in Jesus Christ. Recognizing that there are some things we must choose for ourselves that nobody else can do for us. And we have to pick up this piece all by ourselves and become dependent upon Jesus Christ, not upon a church, not upon a pastor, not upon a Sunday school teacher, but our relationship with Jesus Christ being worked on because we choose to work on it. Sometimes that choosing process of deciding to commit to growing our own Christian health falls down to whether or not we are willing to practice spiritual disciplines. Today, the two disciplines that we will talk about, fasting and prayer. I believe we can push in this area because we have to maintain our spiritual health. And if we are not moving forward in our relationship with Jesus Christ, we will be going backwards in our relationship with Jesus Christ. We will not be maintaining that level of spiritual health. So we have been talking about spiritual disciplines as a way of moving us towards growth in our Christianity. Some spiritual disciplines we've spoken of have been about abstinence, a taking away, a subtraction from that which is normal in our life, while others are spiritual disciplines of engagement, or we need to add on or build into our life things that are not normally there. And so we've been looking at one of each every week. The first time we talked about spiritual disciplines, we talked about solitude, removing other people, other voices from our existence for a period of time so that we can more clearly focus on God. Removing ourselves from society, removing ourselves from the crowd so that we can be alone with God. But at the same time, we then talked about how we need to come together and celebrate God together. So some way, somehow, we have to build into our life cycle times of stepping away from the crowd where every week we come together and celebrate with the crowd. And it's just got to become a normal part of our routine. The second time we spoke on spiritual disciplines, we talked about silence, recognizing that I can be by myself and yet still be very connected to very many voices, whether through radio or CDs or DVDs, the cell phone. And sometimes we need to eliminate all the voices that can stand in the way of the clear voice of God. That means even our own voice sometimes. Silence means and learning to live with that uncomfortableness so that we can hear God in the silence. And of course, one of the clearest ways we can hear from God is by studying His Word. His Word is truth. His Word is life. His Word is freedom. And we can study His Word. Allow our imaginations to roam free. How many of you would have pictured Jesus dumping water on somebody to prove a point? I think how cool that is. I'm thinking next week, I'm going to have a bucket of water, and I'm waiting for one of you to fall asleep. Shh! I think that'd be so cool. But, we have to allow our imaginations to go a little bit and try and figure out what was really going on. What were people thinking? How did people react when they heard that? This is all very important. Silence and study happens, and there's spiritual disciplines. One is a taking away, one is an adding on. Our willingness to practice these things, these spiritual disciplines, will grow our maturity in Christ and really put shape to our spiritual health. Now, the first one we're going to look at today is fasting. That's from Matthew chapter 6, which we just saw on the screen. 16 through 18. I love the way it starts. When you fast. There's no if about it. This is something that is expected. This is something that Jesus did, and Jesus expected that those who follow after him would also do. And so he expects that you and I will fast. When you fast. Now, how you do it? Don't be all sober-faced so that everybody knows. I'm fasting. Because if I do that, I'm doing it for the applause of man rather than the applause of God. And I would much rather have the reward that comes from the hand of God than the reward that comes from the hand of man. But the question is not, should I fast? It's when will I fast? Because it becomes a reality for us. Fasting is probably the best known discipline of abstinence. It's the most known takeaway from our daily existence. Now, I'm telling you, it might be the best known, but I don't think that means it's practiced very often. It's just we know about fasting. People have to fast. You have to go to the doctors and take a test, and they tell you to fast. Don't you hate that? No breakfast. That's just tough. That's just tough. But fasting is something beyond, a 24-hour period before a medical test. It can be something that stretches for a long time. Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. Oh my! Oh my! Can you imagine how worn out you'd be after 40 days and 40 nights of fasting? I'm thinking he went without food and without drink. 40 days and 40 nights. How do you exist like that? Well, you rely on God, and only on God. Kind of a neat story of Jesus. But it is known, but not necessarily practiced. There is, of course, one time of the year when more people actually try and fast. That is the time of Lent. Lent begins on Ash Wednesday and runs through Easter. This year, Ash Wednesday is February 25th. So it is right around the corner. So I'm teaching you about fasting, giving you time to think through it so that you can do it. It starts on February 25th, Ash Wednesday, and will run through Easter on April the 12th. My question I pose for you is, will you fast? Will you deny yourself something? Will you give something up in honor of Christ as a gift to Christ, recognizing that he has given up for you? Will you fast? And why? Why should Christians fast? Well, I believe that every Christian should practice self-denial. Why? Because Jesus denied himself. Jesus walked away from glory in the heavens. He walked away from the throne room of God, clothed himself in humanity, and was willing to be born into that which he created. Unbelievable. Not only was he willing to come and be on earth, he was willing to be a servant on earth. Not only was he willing to serve people on earth, he was willing to lay down his life in the absolute agony of the cross so that mankind, who was making him taste death, could taste life. Jesus gave of himself. He denied his godly right and became human. He denied his right to life and tasted death so that you and me, people who have earned death, might taste life. Jesus denied himself. And so for a period of time, I believe it is appropriate for every Christian to practice self-denial.